Well, hello everybody. Welcome to P.B.M. Money. Today we're going to talk about something that I am learning about as we go, and that is scaling your growth. Notice I didn't say scaling for growth. That's a completely different concept. This is scaling your growth. And I'll tell you what happened. I help people for free, by the way, to learn about money, to get started in savings and, preparing for better things with their finances. And the problem that 99% of them have is they have very little savings, they have no money, and they want to get some money. And that's how we start. And there is a certain way to do that. However, I recently ran into a person who has the opposite problem, has a ton of cash coming in salaries. This person brings in around $15,000 a month, but has no assets. So he wants to stop chasing a paycheck and start building wealth. And so I was trying in the beginning. I told him what I tell everybody else, and he went and he did exactly what I said. And I started thinking about it, and I thought, okay, he can get to where it's going to take me 10 years. He can get there in 2 years if he wants to. And so then I thought, well, that presents a lot of problems. It presents financing problems. Even though his income is very high, at some point the debt-to-income ratio is going to be too high. It presents a management problem. At some point, buying that much stuff is going to require a management company, which is going to cut into his money that he needs to grow. So I finally decided, instead of starting small and working big, he needs to work big and go small. What do I mean? So if he bought a $250,000 duplex and he could pay that off in a year and a half, and along the way pick up another 3 or 4 little single family houses. You say, well, why does he need the little houses? Well, because if you do that several times, at the end of the rainbow, you'll have 10 or 15 houses bringing in $400 or $500 a month. Now you can stop worrying so much about your salary, and here's the key, having the $250,000 duplex paid off. So let's just say that this process takes 2.5 years. Buy a $250,000 duplex, pay it off, and buy 4 single family houses. If that takes 2 years, okay? Then you wait a year and you accumulate a lot of cash and you do it again. At the end of the 5 years, you will have 2 $250,000 duplexes paid off, 10 single family houses bringing in $400 to $500 a month to help you on your next stud. At this point, you're well on your way. Now you ask, well, why would you pay off the duplexes instead of the single family? Well, because in the long run, the best play to building wealth is to pay off the assets that you have, and at any point in the future be able to borrow money against them to help fund growth. That way you're not relying only on your salary, you're not relying only on income from rental, but you can also rely on loan proceeds, which are non-taxable. At that point, that's when growth becomes phenomenal. At a $250,000 duplex, if you've got 2 of them, that leaves you with $500,000 possible financing to build your growth. I went into too much detail, but the point is scaling your growth. And then I started realizing not only is it important to scale your investments, but it's also important to scale the rest of what you do. As an example, what about money? If you start with no money, then you have to do the steps we just discussed. What about scaling your time? This particular individual I was talking about makes a lot of money, but he doesn't have a lot of time. So he's not going to be able to do the things in a timely manner that need to be done, i.e. repairs to the property, or renting, or showing, and I have discussed with him ways around most of these issues. And he's well aware that at some point he is going to have to pay for a property manager to come in and take care of his stuff, and that is going to cost him. But at the point when that happens, because he is scaled, he should be able to afford it very easily and still reach all of his goals. Now what about, in your financial growth, every little thing is important. Scaling your investments, scaling your time, scaling your savings. For him, the first 2 years is going to be all in cash to pay off the house, the duplex. All in. At the end of 2 years, he should have 4 or 5 houses financed and a duplex paid off. Then he needs to take a year off and refurnish his cash and get as much as he can. And at that rate, he could probably save $150,000 in a year. Then we start the process all over. So in a period of 5 years, this particular person will be doing very well. On the other hand, a person that starts with no money and a lot of time can go out and buy single-family homes that may or may not need repair, but he'll have time to rent them, to show them, to fix them up, and to do those things. He's scaling his time, and instead of paying it, spending his time all with money, getting the things that he needs, he can take his time and use other people's money. Then at the end of 5 years, when he's got 4, 5, 6 little houses and a couple of them paid off, now he can go leverage those and buy the duplex. And the process is the reverse of the first. It's all about scaling. And the last thing I want to point out in scaling your growth is the debt. When a person is an average person and brings home an average salary, the bank looks at something called the income to debt ratio, which means your total debt cannot be more than 30 to 40% of your gross income. And that includes mortgages. So if you make a lot of money, that leaves you a lot of room. But if it doesn't, that means the process may be even slower, because you might be able to finance 1 or 2, but then you're either going to have to save and go buy one for cash, or work on paying one of the first 2 off. So it could be slower. But the goal is all the same. Accumulate as many assets as you can, pay as many of them off as you can along the way, and then when the period of time is up, you should have a couple of pieces of real estate that are completely paid off, a couple that are financed, and then the one nice piece that is you're working on paying off. Because that way, so let's say each house is worth $50,000, and you got 5 of them, and you got 2 of them paid off, okay? And you've got your duplex. You have a lot of possibilities. Number one, you could use your savings to pay off another house or pay off the duplex. Or you could refinance one or both of the paid off houses and pay off the duplex. It gives you a lot of flexibility, and you can use leverage to do what you want. And in that latter example, the smart thing to be, why you would pay those two houses off along the way, is so that you can keep getting bank financing, so that when you go to get your duplex, you still have room to be able to afford to finance the duplex. So the goal would be to have as little debt when you go to get the big piece of property at the end. And so when you do that, now you've got the duplex, but you've got 4 or 5 houses with 2 or 3 of them paid off. That's very powerful. That's when wealth starts to grow. Between the time you begin and the time you get to where you need to be when wealth building really starts, what you're doing is accumulating assets. You're accumulating real estate, you're accumulating cash, you're accumulating experience, you're accumulating relationships, you're doing all the things that you need to do to get to the end goal. Now, as an example for our game, ours is to buy the duplex at the end of 5 years. At the end of 5 years, if I were 20 years younger, I would take a year or 2 off, accumulate as much cash as I could, and I'd start over. Only this time, I would buy the duplex first. And then I would go buy some newer, some single-family houses and work on paying the duplex off, so that at the end of the 10-year period, now I will have 10 or 12 single-family houses and 2 paid-off duplexes. The same spot where the first gentleman would be, but it would take me 10 years, it would take him 4.5 to 5 years. It's all about scaling. I learned that this last couple of weeks, and I'm excited for him because he's going to be able to build wealth very quickly. He just doesn't realize it yet. But it would have taken him the same amount of time it's taken me if we hadn't discovered scaling. So I guess the easy way to say it is, as you start your financial journey, figure out what your biggest asset is. Is your asset assets? Like real estate or cash or collectibles, or is it time? If your biggest asset is your age and you're very young, that's very good. Then leverage your time. You don't have to buy 2 or 3 houses a year. You can only buy 1 a year and you're fine. Accumulate some cash, buy another house. It's all about scaling. Figure out what your biggest asset is as you get started and scale that and leverage that as much as you can to get to where you need. If you do it properly, no matter where you start from, whether you have 0 in the bank or you're making $15,000 a month, take home, it doesn't matter. If you scale it properly, it should take you around 10 to 11 years to become a millionaire. If you can't get that done, then you need some teaching and some help. That's about all I wanted to say. You guys have a great day, a great week, and happy investing.